Two things I would like to mention before we go on with the next class. That is something a rabbi said. He said the following: God gave us not a perfect world, but a perfectable one. Of course, he's speaking about the fact that the perfect world was there before, but it was through sin it became imperfect, and that's the one God gives us, the imperfect world. But we can perfect him. Not that we ever will succeed to perfection, but that's what it looks like. We can perfect. We can make the planet better. We can make our lives better. We can make society better. We can have a positive influence, and that is what we are called for. Another thing that's being mentioned while he was talking about it, he said, people are so much about the law and the strict adherence to the law. For example, if a baby boy is sick when he was born, should we postpone the circumcision? Some people will say yes, some people will say no, because it has to be done on the 8th day. What do certain Jews do? They count from day 1 to day 8, and then they start again with day 1. The strange thing about the whole issue is that the founding father of Israel, the real founding father, that's Abraham, he was circumcised, but not on the 8th day. He was 99 years old. So yeah, observance of the law, yeah, well, it has his own way of, or we have our own way of looking at it. And when we look at it, we can see in the Bible things that are not according to what some people say it has to be. So let's go on and look at what we know in the Bible. God showed us, he gave us a Bible so we can use it for our advancement spiritually, but also for our daily living. So this book is actually influencing not only what I do during the day, but also why I'm doing it, and how I'm doing it. So this book is much more a guideline for daily living than a guideline for eternal living. Of course, eternal living is a set, I'm not going to say a reward, because that's probably the wrong word, because it's grace, but that's what God is giving us. And so eternal life is what we have. You can end your own life by killing you, that's suicide. But you cannot kill your spiritual life. You cannot kill who you were, what you were to your parents, what you were to your friends, to your family, your brothers, your sisters. You cannot kill that. So you're not wiped away even by killing yourself. That is an impossibility. So your spiritual life is ongoing. Whether it's in a bad situation or in a good situation, I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying that's what is happening. So this is the guideline. This is the guidebook. This is the manual. So this is what we are looking for. We are looking at the book of the Old Testament, full of gracious ideas, specifically for us. not everything is written to me, not everything is written to you, and I cannot apply everything because that would be just impossible. Because if I imply every day, if I imply one thing on one page, I need 4 years to go through the whole Bible just to apply one thing for a page that's been written in our Bibles. So what I'm saying is the application is not only important, but we cannot apply the Bible as such completely and every detail. Because even if we apply one page a day, we are missing a whole number of things. And that's the message of the Bible. When we talk about the Old Testament, we can do many things. We can talk about the different people who live there, the different time zones, the different the eras, the different cultures, the different languages, the different ideas, the different religions, the different people, the different kingdoms, the different tribes. We can talk about many things, but we decide to take some, let me say it, overarching ideas. And today I would like to talk to you about an overarching idea that is major. And when I say major, I mean major. I would like to talk to you about the flood. So what do we have? We have the flood. Remember, God created the earth. Did he tell us that that earth that he created, or does the Bible tell us that that's the same earth we are living on today, and that's in the same way as it was created? Well, it's clearly that is not, because through sin everything changed. The human life form was attacked. The plant life form was attacked. Animal life form was attacked. The soil, or the earth, was attacked. Out of these attacks, these combined attacks, there was a group of people who came to understand what and who God was. That's clearly mentioned in the book of Genesis. But it's also that in the history of humankind, or of the earth, which is closely related according to the Bible, there is a link we cannot deny. Of course, the creation, God created everything, the earth, the heavens, and then later on you see the creation being unfolded. Out of that comes a perfect place, paradise, and that perfect place is being undone by sin, and then people start to live in sin and doing wrong things. One day the sin is like it's raising so high that God can say, oh, but God has to say, no, I cannot allow it anymore. And so he intervenes. That intervention, listen to me, that intervention was prepared. He knew people would sin, and he knew there was a flood coming, and he arranged the earth according. So accordingly to the situation he knew on beforehand, he set up a whole system. And we are trying to understand a little bit about the system. And that's what we are going to look at today. What systems do we have in place? Where do we what do we know? How do we perceive? What are the types of theories we have? It used to be there was one theory, there was the biblical one, and the other theory was a non-biblical one, in the sense that there was no flood, and if there was a flood, it was only locally, and you know, and that's where it ends. But today, with the advancement of science, from the Christian point of view, creation science, we have found a lot of answers, and we found a lot of things that were said in the past, and now we say, well, maybe that's not what it really looks like. I mean, we are expanding our vision as in the same way as the world is doing. Is that okay? Yeah, it's okay. Is that good? You know, what is good in this? The good thing about it is that now we're starting to understand that it's more complex than ever before. We used to say the earth was covered by water, and that's the way God did it. But the world is now challenging us and saying, okay, where is the proof of what you mean? Where is the proof of what you claim? Where is the proof of the Bible? And so now we have to give proof. The burden of proof is laid on us, although that is not completely right, because the burden of proof is not on us really, in reality. The burden of proof is on the world to prove that there was no flood. And yeah, they found a lot of things that are incompatible with what they think the flood should look like. But when you start with the idea that there's only a local flood and there's not a worldwide flood, then you have a problem, because the Bible speaks about the worldwide flood. So they don't have to tell us that there's a local flood, because we know there are local floods, we know tsunamis, and we know the result of tsunamis. Just think about that, the tsunami, what we have seen in this generation. We are talking about a flood of, a tsunami with waves of, what was it, 35 meters high. Can you imagine what it would be if you have a flood of 3,000 meters high? That's 3 kilometers up. Then you understand that certain things are not exactly how the world is looking at it, and we have to take on board that certain things are not as what people thought in the past about the flood. Let's go on. First of all, we have to look at what we call the biblical issue of the flood. Let us look at what it says in the book of Genesis. Because in Genesis you have a number of chapters speaking about the flood. And the chapters are the chapters 6 and from 6 to 8. Okay, let's read. We cannot read everything because that would take us too long, and there's too much to say about it. Genesis 6 verse 3. Listen. Then the Lord said, "My spirit will not contend with humans forever, for they are mortal. Their days will be 120 years. That's a limitation. Okay, that is a limitation. The wickedness of the world is being mentioned here, and the limitation is also there. So let's look at verses 14 to 16. So make yourself an ark of cypress wood. Originally it's gopher, and like we said, we don't know exactly what the gopher wood was supposed to be. So someone came with the idea, maybe it's cypress wood, and so that's why the translators are using other word cypress. Make rooms in it and coat it with pitch inside and out. So we're going into what it all means and how long it is and how big and how wide, because it's all mentioned there. And if you really want to see an ark that's being built according to these measures, then you have to visit the US, because there is a museum and there's an ark being built there, and then you can visit, you can see with your own eyes what it meant to build an ark. But also when you go in there and you see the height, you see the width, and you see the length of it, and you think, oh, man, how could Noah have built this? Well, it took him a very, very long time. So we are looking at the ark being built, and then in the next chapter, chapter 7, verse 1, the Lord said to Noah, go into the ark, you and your whole family, because I have found you righteous in this generation. He is righteous, and he takes his whole family with him. Are they righteous? That's not being said. Let's read verse 7. And Noah and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives entered the ark to escape the waters of the flood. And then you get an explanation about the animals. It's not true that animals went 2 by 2 and all went to the ark. It is the clean animals were actually 7 pairs, and the other animals were only 2 pairs, only 1 pair, I'm sorry. So they had the male and the female, so they can reproduce. The question was, did Noah take a dinosaur in the ark? That's a good question. Let me explain a little bit about animal life. In and around the time of Jesus, there were probably 2 or 3 types of dogs, and one of them was the wolf, and all the others were domesticated. Well, all the others, the 3 others maybe, kinds of dogs. Out of that situation comes what we have now, with thousands of different types of dogs. I'm not kidding you. And I'm not exaggerating. Thousands of different types of dogs out of this 3 to 4 groups. So that is in 2,000 years. Just go back 6,000 years. Or go back to the time of the flood. That's 4,000 years. So that's another 2,000 years from the story I just told you. When you take the idea of dogs and you put it into the idea of the dinosaur, then you understand. They didn't have to take the huge dinosaurs with them. They could take a small one or a small couple. And the dinosaurs were in the ark. Actually, there are still, you can almost say, remnants of what is called dinosaurs in today's fauna. So it's not that abnormal. But no, Noah didn't take the 20 meter high dinosaur in the ark, but the smaller ones. Anyway, I mean, that is not really that important, but it's important to know that we have an answer to the questions. Okay, let's look at it. So they entered the ark, and then it started raining, and we were going to talk about the rain afterwards. Okay, so we have the 40 days of rain in Genesis 7 verse 11. In the 600 years of Noah's life, it was 600 years, on the 7th day of the 2nd month, so exactly according, specifically mentioned, you can almost say a date and an hour, and a second. It was mentioned that day. On that day, the Bible teaches us, on that day, all springs of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgates of the heavens were opened, and the rain fell on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. You know, when you look outside and you see the blue sky, and you see the white clouds, and you see some darker clouds, where is that water? Well, let me say it this way. It's now in the ocean, so it's not up there anymore. It cannot rain 40 days and 40 nights all over the world now, because that's what happened then. So it is not to be repeated. Luckily, because otherwise you would have another flood. So what do we have? We have a certain specific date. We have specific saying how long the rain took. And then it goes on. In the same chapter, verse 24, the waters flooded the earth for 150 days. And then it says, but God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and all the livestock and all that were with him in the ark. And he sent a wind over the earth, and the waters receded. So we know that that is what is happening. So we know what is happening. The ark is there. We have seen it. We look at it when we open our Bibles. You know, the ark was not only a place to hide, it was also a safe place. So Noah was kind of the savior of the world. Because of his righteousness, a number of people came with him. We don't know whether they were righteous. We know that he was righteous. So the ark eventually landed. The name of the place is being mentioned. So it's not that we don't know where it landed. We know where it landed. I mean, the name is being mentioned. So if it's mentioned there, so why do we doubt? Actually, we can ask ourselves, why? Why is it that we are still in doubt about it? Well, the ark landed at the place after a certain time, after the wind blew and the part of the earth was dried by the wind, and water receded, and eventually what we now know as land came forward, and what we now know as ocean was brought together, and that's why we have so much water and so few land. I mean, something like 75% of the earth is covered by water. So from the outside, we look like a watery planet. Mountain tops are seen in Genesis 8 verse 5. The waters continue to recede until the 10th month, and on the first day of the 10th month, the tops of the mountains became visible. So what is happening is that the water is seemingly find its way in what we now know as the oceans. The underground, the place, the earth crust is being deformed through this hole. But we are going to look at that later on. So what do we have? We have a family, we have a boat, we have the animals, we have the flood, we have the rain, we have the changes of the earth, and now we are on that changes. We are on those things that are different, are starting to be different. The top of the mountains are being seen now. I mean, of course, you cannot see on the other side of the world, so they have to be somewhere where the ark brought him. Where were they? Well, that is something we can still fight about, or we can decide whether that's important for us to know. What we know is we know certain things, and that's where we start with. So Noah used birds to scout. When the birds return, it means there's no place to land, to settle, to nestle. So no, until one day we know the story about the dove, we know the story about the ravens, we know the story about the animals. We know the story about the fact that the ark eventually landed somewhere. And when that big ship landed, it was set on seemingly on a mountain, and the water was still receding, so there was still changes in the landscape because of the water. The pressure of the top layer was lesser and lesser, and the pressure was on deeper and deeper and deeper. What happened was that through the pressure, and the earth crust was pushed on this side, on one side, it comes up on the other side. That's how mountains came into being. And it was not just here, it was also there, and it was also there. So there was a whole range of different mountains being, well, ranges of mountains were actually formed in that way. And when you look at the mountain range from the North Pole almost completely to the South Pole in the Americas, you can see the line. And you can see the line of the Ural Mountains in Europe, making the boundary between Europe and Asia. So what I'm saying is, these things are still visible. When you look at the Himalayan mountains in Asia, the height of it, the impact in life today. So we are actually impacted by what happened 4,000 years ago or longer. So that is what is giving us a good idea about the reality of this flood. And we can look at it and we can understand it. So what do we have? We have the ark, we have the people, we have the animals, and then eventually we have the mountains, we have the dry land. And then the ark goes open and the people leave the ark. What do you do when you're 8 people in the world and you have a big ark sitting there? You have nowhere to go. There are no roads, there's no television, there are no airplanes, there are no other boats. There are, what is this? What type of world are we in now? It's like landing on a different planet. And that's what you can almost say what they did. They landed on a different planet. The planet was totally changed. And so now we have them sitting there, being there, and they want to do something. And not everything they do is okay, but that's reality. Okay, that's reality. But now, before we go on, because we have a long way to go until we finalize everything about the Old Testament, let's look at some theories. Some theories are possibilities. So when you present the theory, you're not saying that's what it is, but you say this is a possibility. And so we will look at a number of possibilities. How to explain what was going on, what is going on, and what it means, what it meant then, what it means in the between time from them and us now, and what it means for us today. we have what is called the Canopy Theory, and the Canopy Theory proposes that the floodgates of heaven, from the passage we just read, was a primary source of the flood waters. The waters are believed to have been held in the form of a canopy. Canopy of vapor or solid state. It's 2 possibilities here. It has it's in the upper atmosphere. The canopy was formed during creation time and was destroyed in the time of the flood. So it's no longer there. When it's no longer there, we cannot see it, we cannot visit it, we cannot prove it, because it's gone. That's because of the reality. And then you say, well, why do I have to believe this? You don't. You don't have to believe it. I'm just presenting some ideas here. So, the canopy provided protection before the flood. So the rays of the sun could not impact us as it does today. Have you ever seen someone? I'm sure you have seen someone who worked all his life in open air. Someone works on the field. Look at the skin, and you see that skin is compared to someone who lives all his life indoors. You can compare those two, and you will see that the skin of the one who works outdoors is different from the skin of the person that lives indoors. That is because of the sun rays. When you block the sun rays, almost all of us lived inside. That's how it looked like. whatever rays there are, and there's a whole range of rays, but I'm not going into that. The issue is that when you're not influenced by the rays of the sun so much, and the temperature is constant all over the earth, always, then you have a totally different way of living. But with the flood, the blockage of the sun was done. And now the sun was burning on the skin of those people. And you know what happens when you have, when you go to a place where the sun is burning. Let me tell you a little story. I was in Algeria with friends of ours, and one of our hosts was the wife of the president of the college. She had never left the area she lived in Algeria. So we took her from the place she lived to the airport. That's when we went back to Belgium. And in the airport, she had never seen the airport. In the airport there was a white man, and he had been in the sun. So his skin was slightly burned, and he turned, that's what happens to us. We turn reddish, pink. And she looked at him, she said, "What is this? Is this a pink man?" I mean, she had never seen a pink man. Yes, she had seen a white man, but never seen a pink man. And so she asked about it. That is the reaction of the body to the sunbeams. We all have the possibility of different colors in our skin. So that happened then and there. And so she saw it for the first time. Of course, we knew. I mean, for us, that's something that's, yeah, it's not daily. It's at least it's something we see every year. But it was amazing to her. So that was amazing when the people from the Noah clan came out of the ark. Suddenly, the sun was burning. And the skin color changed. Everyone, let me say this, everyone has underneath the DNA, there is a system that make choices for you. Those choices are determined by your ancestors. But when you go back in time, you will find that someday, one day, all of us were the same. Out of that came the different types of races. Similar to what I talked about the dogs, remember? So we have different races. There's no racism involved because we're all the same. The color of our blood is the same. The color of our skin is different. The color of our hair is different. The way we dress is different. The way our culture is different. Our language is different. But we're all human beings. That is what we find here in Noah time. So we have in Noah time, we have this situation. Suddenly, the skin started to burn, and they changed. It changed the face of the people. It changed the face of the skin of the people was attacked by the sun rays, so they had to cover themselves. So that was the idea of the canopy. And then we have what is called the Hydroplate Theory. Let me read it so you will understand it clearly. The Hydroplate Theory postulates that all land masses were positioned upon equifire at the beginning of creation. It is believed these massive bodies of water were triggered to burst forth and flood the earth. This theory has gained much credibility within the creation community due to the efforts of Walt Brown in his book titled In the Beginning. In a series of interconnecting subterranean chambers below the crust of the earth existed layers of highly pressurized water. At the time of the flood, these waters broke from the crust with high pressure, and it was like the geysers coming up and were pushed into the atmosphere. The crust of the earth split apart, forming the continental arrangements we have now. So the Atlantic Ocean floor rose. On the opposite side of the earth, the crust sank, forming the Pacific Ocean. You know, I talked about this. It's a good explanation. It does not explain everything. For example, what do you do with the heat and so on, but it gives you a good idea. So the next thing is what we call the plate tectonic. Plate tectonic, that's the different plates the earth look. I mean, when you look at the map of the earth, you will see types of plates, and the plates are going under the sea and forming, and when two plates come together and they move, then you have earthquakes. For example, there is a pushing of the Indian plate into the Himalaya. Even today, that's ongoing, and it's something like, I don't know exactly, I think it's like 1 centimeter or 2.5 centimeters a year that it's pushing into it. So that's what we have. That's what we know. That's a good theory. Okay, so we don't blame anyone to believe it or not believe it. Then you have the Comet Theory. Sorry. Excuse me for a second. Yeah. So we have the Canopy Theory, we have the Hydroplate Theory, we have the Tectonic Plate Theory. It's complicated even to explain it. It has to do with the viscosity of the mantle of the earth. That is the fluently of the earth crust, or the mantle, the inside. So you had differences in viscosity in different places on the earth. That came all to be at the same time, exploded, and it was influenced by each other, and it set up a whole series of eruptions. That means that there was a a massive flood. The tsunami at that time, we are talking about hundreds of times bigger than the ones we experienced in this century. Steam set out and pushed into the atmosphere, and then it came back from the atmosphere in the form of rain. And there was vapor, of course, and when vapor cools down, it also turns into rain. It gives you a good idea. The same problem as what we talked about before is that what happened to the temperature, what happened to the heat. The removal of the heat is not explained here. Okay, we have the astronomic theory, and the astronomic theory, the influence of the moon. The flood account depicts a calendar of 12 months of 30 days, which is 360 days, while the surfacing of the Earth can account for the globe achieving additional spin, because we have 365 days a year. It does not account for the moon's current orbit, slightly less than 30 days. It's not exactly 30 days, it's a little bit less. Moreover, the moon is receding from the Earth at the rate of a half an inch every year. So the moon is actually saying goodbye to the Earth, but it's half an inch, which is 1.5 centimeters a year. But over a period of time, that will influence what is happening. So you can count back where the moon was, let's say 4,000 years ago, 4,500 years ago, and where the moon will be 1,000 years from now. So we know that things are happening. Let me say it this way. God demonstrated in many cases, including in the time of the flood, that he would use natural forces to affect his miracles. I talked about that before, and just someone who came up with that idea is a Jew with, I think he has 6 doctorates, I'm not completely sure. It's Dr. Velikovsky, and he explained in Ages in Chaos what it could mean. But anyway, that's how it looks like. So what do we have? We have the canopy, the hydroplate, the plate tectonic, the astronomic theory. Then you have a possibility of an asteroid, or the asteroids together, something like 1,000 asteroids together attacking the Earth and disrupting the whole Earth in a very short time. No, it's magnitude 11 earthquakes. It's 3 kilometer high tsunamis. It is global torrential rain. It's mega hurricane winds. It's global winter. That's what is happening. The seas and the oceans and the other bodies of water are the sources of the impact tsunami. The flooding of the continents resulting from the asteroid impacts, catastrophic rains, the energy ejected into the planet, our planet, being of so much of an impact that triggers catastrophic plate tectonic influences. Okay, then we have the Comet Theory. There was a day that someone, I think it was in the 17th century, the end of the 17th century, someone with the name of William Wisdom had a theory that at the end of a tail of a comet there was water, and that water came down to the Earth and that triggered the flood. That's a good story because it's something you cannot prove, and the problem is that we never found any comet afterwards that had that type of tail. So what I'm saying, it is possible, but I'm not saying that's what it is. And then you have the Mantle Theory. Water also exists in the upper parts of the mantle. Scientists found that a mineral called Hydroplate that contains enough water to fill 30 times our oceans. This is more than enough to flood the Earth up to the highest mountains. And then you have another one, which is the vertical plate theory or tectonic plate theory. Instead of triggering catastrophic plate tectonic, the asteroids impacted, or impact is used or suggested to use, and have caused local regional vertical depressions on the crust of the Earth, impacting the whole of the Earth, of course, because when you push here, like I said, it goes up here. When you push there, it comes up here. When you have water there, then you don't have water here. That's and then it goes from one place to another, and then it forms a series of difficulties all over. The excess heat again is one of the problems, like I said before, but that is not the reason why we do not believe it. The reason is we don't have an explanation right now. Maybe in 10 years, maybe in 20 years, maybe never, we will have an explanation. But it gives us a good idea about the reliability of this book. This book is giving us a guideline for life. And even in a difficult situation, like when we talk about the issue of the flood, we still have the guideline of the Bible. And the Bible there's nothing wrong. The Bible is not a scientific book, but what it says about science is right. The Bible is not a geological book, but what it says about geology is right. The Bible is not an archaeological book, but you find all proofs in archaeology about the Bible. So take this on board. See you tomorrow for the next class. God bless you.